It's really lovely to be here. My name is Sahar Azarabadi. I'm managing partner and faculty at New Ventures West. We offer coach certification programs. We offer personal and professional development programs, coaching services, and also leadership development programs. And so part of what I wanted to talk about is presence-based leadership. So how can presence be a support to us as we navigate complexity? So as leaders, we're kind of living in unprecedented times. Does that ring true for anybody? Yeah. So tell me about some of what you're experiencing. Yeah, bad. I'll repeat it on the mic. So who said yes?
Lack of resources and key expectations to do more with less.
Lack of resources, expectation to do more with less. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
The pace of life.
Yes.
Technology.
Pace of life and technology, information coming at us. Yeah.
People's fear of change.
People's fear of change.
Leaders have empathy burnout is
Leaders are experiencing burnout, yeah, through empathy burnout, yeah. Mm-hmm. Did you add something? Okay, yeah.
I think for me it's been that leading in a mindful way, coming more from the heart than the head, has felt like I'm constantly going against the grain a day-to-day basis.
Yes.
On what societal framework has created for us and what a leadership looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's often so much doubt that if I do go against the grain, I don't have as much reassurance that that path is actually going to
work
or not.
Right. So I'll just summarize what I heard. So kind of leading from the heart and not solely the head has it sometimes feel like we're alone. Sometimes feel like we're swimming upstream, and uncertainty about whether this is going to work or not. So thank you for all of your feedback. So yes to all of that. And I'm using the term leader quite broadly. So some of us may be leaders in our organizations. Some of us may be leaders in our communities. Some of us may be leaders of a household. And all of us are leading our lives. And so historically, or perhaps more practiced ways of being in life, which is maybe focusing more on what we're up to in the world, the actions that we take, or the how we're up to it, so developing skills, is no longer quite meeting the needs of the moment. True? It's another way of saying what we just heard around information overload, empathy burnout, doing more with less. So our strategies, our ways of moving in the world are no longer sufficient. So what's being called forth is a deepening into who we truly are, the kind of person that's embodying and enacting in life, right? So as human beings, we live in stories, we have narratives. We have narratives that are at the individual level, that are at the collective level, families. So we have this in different ways, right? I'm this type of person, I'm not that type of person. Our family does this, our family doesn't do that. We also have ways that we understand and sense make what's happening in the world. So kind of, we could call it meta-narratives. So in leadership, in the world, we hear this quite often. We're living in a VUCA world. Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. We also more recently have BANI, brittle, anxious, non-linear, and incomprehensible. So just notice for yourselves, what happens when I name these things? So you can notice, do a 3-center check. What happens in your head? Thoughts that arise? What happens in your heart center? Any emotions that you're experiencing? And what happens in your body? Any sensations? So when I say volatile, head, heart, body, what happens? Or ambiguous? Or uncertain? Anybody want to share? Just what are you noticing in your own direct experience as I name this way of understanding our world? A tightening. Where do you experience the tightening?
It presents in the front of the body.
Front of body tightening. Okay, great. You had something? Buzzing in the chest. Anybody else? Yeah. Less grounded. Anybody else? Yep. Tightening of the belly. Okay. So this is really quite interesting to see. So the narratives that we live in, the ways that we understand the world, they start to shape us in a particular way. So they shape us to pay attention. It cultivates our habits of attention on particular things, particular aspects. And when we pay attention to those things, then we take actions in the world based on what we've attended to. And in those actions, because we're practicing it over and over, we have a particular embodiment or a ruined being. And so it goes. So this is a cycle of how we can stay the same, which is highly intelligent. Our bodies are calibrated for homeostasis. And this can also be a way that we can shift who we take ourselves to be, the type of world that we're in, how we relate to other people, right? So I'm not questioning the validity or truth of VUCA or BANI, or sometimes we talk about it as polycrisis, meta-crisis. Has anybody heard of these? So like all the systems that we're used to, structure system, education, healthcare, economics, they're kind of disintegrating or softening or rolled on fire, literally and metaphorically. So again, I'm not questioning the validity, but what I'm really interested in is how does that way of sense-making shape us? And then what possibilities do we see for ourselves to act? And what possibilities close down for us in those interpretations? And what might be a different way? So bringing more of ourselves forward. So everybody had a piece of paper or even your hand. So really then, if you had a piece of paper, you can roll it up lengthwise, and we're going to create a little telescope for ourselves. So you can roll it up lengthwise or your programs. Sorry, mindful team. So wrap it up pretty tight. Or you can use your hand telescope here. Everybody have a telescope of some sort? So grab and choose a view and just look through that telescope. And what do you see? Somebody see me. Where do I see? So some people are looking in different directions. So I see something over there that's beige. It's got some framing around it. That's about as much as I can tell. Anybody else? Not much. What's that? Not a lot. So this is what we refer to in our coaching work as our structure of interpretation. And oftentimes our structures can be quite narrow. And it has us view ourselves and the world not quite fully. Things get left out. So I just wrapped up my whole paper here. So lost it over her with Dr. Bueller that oftentimes when we have that narrow view, what happens is our our mind, our cognition, starts to scenario plan, and then we take actions based on past experience. Not inherently a bad thing. There's some intelligence in that. And what gets left out? So oftentimes we're actually not meeting the moment fully. We're not accessing all of the resources of our being. And so there's some practices to be had around how do we access more presence, more resource, so we can meet the moment and have more skillful response. Because oftentimes when we're reenacting history, it can contribute to a little bit some more suffering than is necessary. So go ahead and take your telescopes again, sorry. And just write in the lens, again with the hand or with the paper, write in the lens. So what do you see now with the wider lens? What's that? Me and the podium. And what happens when you have more of that view? So you see not only me, but the podium.
Context.
So you have more context. Yeah. And how does that help? More understanding. More information. What else? What's that? More tactical or practical? Impactful meaning. Yes, thank you. More impactful. So isn't that interesting that when we can open up to include more, there's more possibilities, right? So this is what we're pointing to with presence for leadership, is that we can include more, turn towards the trouble one of my teachers talks about, because there is trouble in the world. So how do we actually cultivate more capacity to be with all of this and then be able to have more skillful action or right action, as some wisdom traditions talk about? So this is Wayne Dyer speaking about Portia Nelson. Some of you may know this. This is a different way through poetry of talking about what I've just been talking about and we've been exploring together.
There was a friend of mine, her name was Portia Nelson. Portia passed away a few years back. She lived up in Seattle. And she was at a seminar, and they asked everyone to write on a 5x7 sheet of paper or card the 5 chapters of their life. They only wanted to give them 5x7 cards because they didn't want to get too wordy. And Portia Nelson sat down and wrote these words about the 5 chapters of her life. And I thought I would share them here with you. They're so beautiful. She said, chapter 1 of my life. I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I'm lost. I'm helpless. It isn't my fault. And it takes forever to find a way out. Chapter 2 of my life. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place. It isn't my fault. And it still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3 of my life. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it there. I still fall in. It's a habit. My eyes are open. I know where I am. It's my own fault. And I get out immediately. Chapter 4 of my life. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5 of my life. another street. Library, torch it up. I walked down another street.
So this is what we're pointing to with this structure of interpretation and what it takes to change, and how there's an inertia in our way of being, our embodiment, that has us, in the first 3 chapters, she was still falling into the hole. And there is a possibility for change because we start to pay attention. We cultivate a different habit of attention so that we can act in different ways. So I'm just curious, how is this resonating for you or not resonating for you, or questions that are emerging for you? How do you see this playing out in your leadership? Does it feel like sometimes we're walking into the same hole? I know that that's true for me. Am I the only one? Yeah, go ahead.
I feel like that's all of us.
You feel like that's all of us, yeah.
We eventually learn.
Maybe if we're lucky out the primary stream tech as a way.
Yeah, so we eventually learn, and if we're lucky, we find a different path, a different street to take, yeah. Anybody else? How's this impacting you?
Or a different city completely.
Or a different city, yeah, exactly. Even more possibilities. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like also sometimes if you keep falling in the hole, you can start to think, well, I guess I just added this hole.
Yeah.
Just this is my identity.
Right. So if you keep falling into the hole, we can take it up as an identity, a misunderstanding of who we are, truly. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a colleague that says fail is first attempt in learning. And that's what it reminds me of.
Uh-huh.
I think we have to normalize that
Yes.
we make mistakes.
Yes.
That is, in fact, how we learn to do things differently.
Yes.
Sometimes slow, sometimes fast.
Right.
But normalizing these things that are human struggles
Yes.
and looking for ways to shift our thinking. Having an appreciative inquiry facilitates
Uh-huh.
everything there's about possibilities. And when we do those activities with people, they're often shocked by all the things that they can chose not to see,
Right.
because they weren't thinking from the perspective of what are the possibilities. They were thinking from what do I see and how I can stop.
Right. Exactly. So tell me again the fail to the
First attempt at learning.
fail is the first attempt in learning. Yeah. Beautiful. So let me just try to repeat back what I just heard. So normalizing that learning is part of the process. And oftentimes what happens in leadership or with teams that we're on, so what kind of conditions are we creating as leaders for learning? That can we actually, like, what's an alternative to even talking about it as failure? Maybe it's an experiment. Maybe it's an exploration. Maybe it's something that we're trying. So it's, yeah, so I love what you're bringing in.
Also just how we respond when things go wrong. Like,
And how, yes,
we recently say, I made a really big mistake.
yes,
$75,000 is the budget.
right.
Okay, well, let's look.
Yeah,
I
right.
can figure this out, right? So, things that people are getting really hard on themselves about, we can sometimes find other ways, other solutions.
Yes, exactly. And when someone makes a mistake, that it's not something personal, like Jess was saying in the back about taking on an identity, that means I'm bad in some way. Yeah. There was a hand back there. Yeah.
What I thought was interesting, I view it within chapters, it was Steve, but she was stuck in the hole for longer until she stopped
Ignoring and blaming.
Yes.
the time that she got out of the hole quickly was when she said,
It's my fault.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Prior to that, she was avoiding
Mm-hmm.
and blaming others,
Yes.
taking the ownership.
Yes. That's great. So the observation was that the pattern started to flip or switch when the person was able to take ownership and see their part in it. So another way of talking about it is widening the view to include ourselves, to see like what's really happening here. Thank you.
I have seen this before, but this time I saw it so differently because I saw it as taking that other street is mindfulness, like changing our autopilot habits over and over again,
Yes.
doing what sort of our evolutionary brain or our, habits in life.
Yes.
But that mindfulness is the sort of the way
Right.
to take the other street and change the structure and function of our brains.
Yes.
Choose other streets.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So the observation is that mindfulness was actually the practice that enabled this person to see the other possibilities. So yes, exactly. Thank you. And what?
So saw it as a demonstration of challenging and need to get to a state of mindfulness or this chapters 1 and 2 we're thinking about this
Context of her life.
Yes.
so much more time than chapters but
Mhm.
Sit there and you wonder how
much of her life she in chapter 1
much of her life was she in chapter
Right.
when
did she finally get?
the chapter 4 client specifically thought figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's definitely,
Even though it's an inspirational story.
I think it highlights just how hard it can be,
Yes, it can be.
how much time you spend in chapter 1.
Yes. Yes. So let me just repeat for the observation is just a wondering about how much time each of the chapters took and then how much energy it can take to actually shift into that state of mindfulness, which is true. It's like, this is why we call it a practice. And then the practice actually cultivates an embodied way of being. And I would say maybe a curiosity that arises for me is one aspect is time, another is intention and attention. And that may they may not be a direct correlation. So it's just it's a wondering that I have. Yeah, you had something.
It's great. Well, this spent different time, different lots of time in different phases. I think too, like cultivating that awareness that sometimes you're in chapter 3 and 4.
Yes.
I mean, in cultivating that grace and compassion for yourself that, you're working through these steps to be different and to try different routes. So there.
Yes.
So it's something that we do fall back on, what we're familiar with, even though we know that
Exactly. Yeah. So the observation is that sometimes we go back and forth between the chapters, and that even if we've found another street, we may find ourselves in the same or a different type of hole. And that's the nature of being human, right? It's the nonlinear part of the Bani world or the complexity part of the VUCA world. And so really the invitation is, can we cultivate a capacity to be with exactly that, the nonlinearity of life? You had something? Well, last one.
Echo what you said. No matter how good a leader is,
Yes.
it's your finality.
Yes.
But the one key thing about this is there's other people involved besides you looking in the mirror at yourself. While you have to admit, I just saw a hole, I got to get out fast. Okay, the other part of this equation is the people that are working for you, okay, or that you're responsible.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most important things you have to do is to have trust. And trust, they need to trust you. You need to trust them.
Yes.
When you get up and you fall in that hole and you admit to your growth that wasn't a really good idea. I don't think this is going to work. What do you say? Now you admitted to selling the hole, not as alpha, and just enable the growth. Come up to solution, get a truthful by admitting.
Yes. Right. So that. Yes, exactly. So the observation is that the inevitability of perhaps falling into the hole, and that to have a trusting relationship between leader and team and creating a culture that you can support each other out of the hole. And perhaps the hole can actually transform into the street if we cultivate the capacity to hang out in it. So this, in my view, is really what we're up to with mindfulness, is cultivating the capacity to be with things exactly as they are. So this is what we mean by presence for leadership. And I just want to introduce a couple of distinctions that you all as practitioners know, that we have different centers of intelligence. And part of what happens in our culture is that we center cognition more or most. This is your observation of leading with heart, Kim, in front, right? Yeah. And so this is not a doing away with head-centered intelligence or cognition. It's what other intelligences do we have that we can bring online. And so in the head center, the gifts are clarity and wisdom, our skillfulness at expressing things, making distinctions, helping people to understanding ourselves. Our heart center, the gifts are, this is the place of compassion. We heard Kristen talk about compassion yesterday. The heart is the organ of integration, so it sees the wholeness in ourselves and other people. It gives us courage to be able to turn towards things, to be with them before we try to problem solve or maneuver. Our body, so our somatic intelligence, is our place of vitality. It's our place of experiencing ground and stability. Someone over there talked about ground. Our power to move through the world. It's our place of presence. So if we're not embodied, we're not present. Can't be. And then, so that's our inner kind of intelligence. There's also the interpersonal or kind of field intelligences, which is relational. This can be our curiosity. So Dr. Brewer talked about bringing curiosity to what is like, I wonder, what's that about? And it can be a place of feeling deeply connected. So do we have relationships that are mutually beneficial and sustaining? And then finally, these are just a few, this is 5 that we're bringing forward here, is our spiritual intelligence. And I'm not holding this in a religious affiliation in particular. It's more, to what extent do we feel connected to something greater than us, to the web of life? To what extent do we connect with a sense of purpose? That we have meaning, our work has meaning, that we can make a contribution in this world. And so when we're leading from presence, we're really coming into all of these, drawing from all of these intelligences. So life feels more dynamic. We can meet each moment freshly. We feel more deeply connected to what's happening. We have more resource available to us, both inner and around us, to meet the moment. And then this is a big one for leadership. So we have more creativity. We can be more spontaneous. We can be more innovative in how we're acting or meeting the moment. So because I talked about stories and how they shape how we understand ourselves and the world, anybody know who this is? Okay, so this, oh, good. So this is Michael Meade. He is a prolific storyteller. He has many, many books written. He's a mythologist. So he studies myths from around the world as a way of understanding ourselves and current events. And so I'm offering this as perhaps another possibility of making sense of the world and what we're in the midst of. So this is a few minutes long, so let's listen to Michael.
All people are looking for knowledge because it's natural for humans to seek knowledge. And they say that there's a place where the exact knowledge that everybody's looking for can be found. A cave in which knowledge is stored. And they say even though it's nearby, and even though there are roads going in all directions, highways and super highways and back road trails, and even though people are driving north, south, east, and west in cars day and night, they don't seem to find the cave where looking for it. And they do say, should you find the cave, what you would see inside the cave is an old woman. And the old woman is in the cave, and she's weaving the most beautiful garment that anyone has ever seen. And she's been weaving it for a long time. And she wants the hem of the garment to be particularly beautiful. And so she's weaving the hem of porcupine quills. And in order to prepare them to be woven into the hem of the garment, she has to bite down in order to flatten them. And she has biting down on porcupine quills for so long. She has worn her teeth down so that there's nothing left but nubs barely appearing above the gums. But still, she keeps biting down on the quills and weaving them into the hem of the garment. And every once in a while, she has to go to the back of the cave. And at the back of the cave, there's a fire. And some people say that fire is the most ancient thing in the entire world. And over the fire, there's a cauldron. And in the cauldron, there are the seeds of all the flowers and all the bushes and all the plants and all the trees and everything that grows from the heart of the earth. And if she doesn't go back and stir the cauldron full of seeds, and the seeds will burn, and if they burn, then we won't have plants, and we won't have vegetables or flowers or trees. And so she gets up every once in a while, puts the garment on the floor of the cave, and goes to the back of the cave towards the fire. And because she's old, and because she's been weaving that garment for so long, she moves slowly. And as she slowly goes to the back of the cave, the black dog goes over to where the garment is now laying on the floor of the cave, and the black dog sees a loose thread. And what can you do as a dog is a loose thread? The black dog takes the loose thread and begins to pull on it and keeps pulling until the entire garment has been unraveled, and so nothing is left but a chaotic mess of threads on the floor of the cave. And then the old woman comes back from stirring the stew of seeds, and when she comes back, she sees her long labor of love and creativity unraveled into chaos on the floor of the cave. And so she stops and looks at the chaos in front of her. We don't know how long she looks. Long enough to consider that she has to do something, and so she sits down with the weaving again. And she sees a loose thread, and she picks up that loose thread, and as soon as she picks it up, she sees a vision of an even more beautiful garment than the one she had been weaving before, and she begins to weave that garment. And as she weaves it, she knows this is the most beautiful garment that anyone has ever seen. And the elders tell this story when everybody begins to worry that the world might come to an end. They tell the story when everything goes upside down.
We have the chaos of the audio and the video not being synchronized. So my sense of this story is it's in the pause where she came to presence that a different possibility emerged. That she envisioned a garment that's even more beautiful. So that's my invitation here, is an embodiment of presence so that we can step in with more resource into all that we're in the midst of, because we can't change the information that's coming at us. We can't necessarily change the doing more with less externally. But what presence allows for is for us to enter into that conversation differently. And perhaps through that entry, something changes. So I'd like to give you an opportunity to just practice presence for listening. So I'll invite you to find somebody to work with, one person. Just turning to someone next to you or moving chairs or what have you. And so, one person in that partnership, please raise your hand. You're person A. I know, I'll tell you what you're saying yes to in a moment. So person A is going to be the presence for listener. And person B is going to be telling the story of an inflection point in your life. And an inflection point is a moment or an event, something that happened that shifted how we move through the world or who we take ourselves to be. So just for the sake of time, it's going to be a short share, so maybe like a 2-minute share. And so for the person A, the presence for the listener, here's my invitation for you, is to have about 80% of your attention on yourself. And noticing how you're impacted by your partner's share, this precious human being that's sitting with you. Noticing thoughts, emotions, sensations. So what's happening for you as you listen? And this is not an efforting, it's actually a letting go, because we know how to do this. And seeing what's here in the relational field. And you may ask in the background, what does this person really care about? What am I sensing that is really important to this person through this share? And similarly, the person who's sharing their inflection point, you can see what am I noticing as I'm sharing? And what am I noticing about what I share based on the quality of the listening of my partner? Is that clear? Clear enough to engage? 80% is on yourself. Yep. And so just, of course you're listening to content, but what I'm inviting is a different habit of attention, perhaps. So we'll take a couple of minutes for this share and then we'll switch roles.
And probably graduating when I don't get people all that is going to be that's the next night. But for fit, from top of all the day, I'm like, I don't know, skills. And it's critically helps at all you have is the shin who is long, it is, and means it is not, but in all 8 and one night onyx. Okay, sounds if you see serious one. Looking at this, I really want to sell me and means I call for hot was enough. See, you're the year with the Latin of and cloud is the even as the Allen has his up the market. Our sealed how you're making this of kind of ABD and Sacral and giving all to keep the American hate service. Those of bucks and on doesn't buy the enemy and cow with a sibling. Even in the Austin had felt to have anything to about so forth. On it to come out there and go live and actually the gal things is so great to hear that though and that's me not just like go have how I'm looking at not of why the matter it's peace signs and it's not
45 more seconds for the share.
how they like then on up on that I'm to be more that all so I'll leave it on a thing but you look at them pedals and well, I don't know what I hate it all. I mean, indeed, and like you see, not this air and you know, all this stuff with the movie and they
Okay, so wrapping up your inflection point stories and bring your attention back, please. I know it's such a short share, but precious moments.
go love when they form with the compassionate. Yeah.
So as you wrap that up, we're just going to switch roles. So person A is now going to be the sharer of an inflection point, and person B is going to be the presence for listener. So a couple of minutes for this.
But indeed, I'm just a cease. It's easy, like to mind, and for these people know. Are you fine? How big person? Because they're created between the dimension of one and ready to get not and the assumed digital down. So that all in the place of here that count on an the kind of thing the our skill game. But within the can should not fall. Yes, feel that what the machine is happening to other. I think that maybe a bit of a system. That's the end of bonds and that can be already. So we carefully and I can by the outing through the this is a bit of a but you have to buy the class that you have to like only the technology. Crocs kind of turn back in the list and one eye sound and if she's quick fluent it up. So I'm really at active state like being a soldier, get fight about income and the not that I need is full on the new that there is very much and it's that he didn't know anything they come and leave with the old shit and then do that.
So 30 more seconds to wrap up your story shares.
So the part is like getting oxygen and unpaid. I don't feel much of all today's bag. You see, so that's the end how anything that way on the other have arms out, go on and the betting the hitting and the thing is here having had out a bit like the heavy 20 15 and read and that was good.
All right, so wrapping up, thanking your partner for the share.
I felt like this week tonight, you able.
So let's just hear one or two folks. What did you notice? What did you learn? What was the impact of this on you? Yeah.
Because you would ask us to focus on what we were feeling, I think I noticed things that maybe I couldn't. So, more often I would be in my mind thinking to things that were similar or like experiences that would allow me to create. And so you would ask us to notice what we were feeling. I was less in my like noticed like parts of the story.
Okay. Right. Beautiful. So because we had invited different habits of attention, that you noticed different things like a warming of the heart and perhaps not the habitual way that we've practiced finding similarities cognitively. Beautiful. Anybody else? What did you notice? What did you learn? Yeah.
I learned that I'm great at asking questions and not put up and radiation foods that I'm supposed to.
Okay. Yes.
And really begin to doing the semi.
Yes. Okay, great. It's a wonderful noticing. So the noticing was that you're great at asking questions and oftentimes not great at being as attuned to the response because we're thinking about the next question that's coming. So yeah, sometimes it's a different stretch into presence for listening. Anybody else? Two more, and then we'll wrap up.
So it's paying attention to more.
Yes.
Choose or to be more in relationship with what he was saying.
Some more presence to nonverbal cues. Yeah. Interestingly, there's many studies that are done. There's between 70 to 86% of our communication is nonverbal. What's that? So it's lovely to be able to include that in our listening. One more.
I think there was also some math experience I could do.
Yes. Yes. Yep. Oh, beautiful.
Me. I think, and I put my pencil in my research, and the test went to you before.
Yes.
I saw when skepticism, this heat is
gorgeous. Yeah. So the attention being on your own body allowed you to experience a lot of joy. And it's true. So how amazing that by actually attending to ourselves, we can feel even more connected and in relationship. So we can chat afterwards. You need to wrap up, but I'll come and chat with you after. So here's what I'll leave you with as a quote from one of my favorite poets, John O'Donohue. And he says, what we encounter, recognize, or discover depends to a large degree on the quality of our approach. When our approach is one of reverence, we find ourselves falling into a deeper embrace with all that is open to encounter, both internally and in the surrounding breathing world. So my hope for you is that you weave a beautiful tapestry through your presence for leadership, and that the reverence of your approach will allow you to fall into a deep embrace of life. Thank you so much.